Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. So this is day 7 of the $1 Million Throw Read Aloud, and we're going to be reading chapter 9 today. The teams were tied 7-7 at halftime. It was hardly anything to do with the way Nate was playing, and absolutely nothing, zero, with the way he was throwing the ball. The Patriots were still in the game despite him today, because it turned out that the throw to Willie Clifton was one of Nate's better throws of the half, just because it was in the neighborhood of one of his intended receivers. They had come into the game thinking they couldn't run the ball against the Blair Bears because all that size they had up front, but by the time the Patriots took the ball on a 70-yard drive to tie things up, running the ball was all they were doing. In their playbook, the even numbers meant you ran right and the odd numbers meant you ran left. And as they finally started moving the ball, Nate just kept looking over at the chalkboard to see which direction Liddell or Ben would be running. They ran the ball and kept running, and that was the script for the Valley Patriots now. Not a single pass on the drive that ate up the clock in the field. "You okay with this?" Coach Rivard had asked Nate before what turned out to be the last drive of the half, telling him what they were going to do, going after a smash mouth team with smash mouth ball. "I'm about winning, Coach. You know that," Nate said. "I'd rather have this many completions." He made a 0 with his thumb and forefingers. "If it's the best way for us to get a win." "You carry us every Saturday," Coach said. "Let's let Liddell and Ben do that for a few minutes." Liddell finally ran it into the end zone from the 5-yard line with just 15 seconds left on a draw play. A thing of beauty. Malcolm just bearing Willie for once. Everybody else blocking their man as if their starting jobs depended on it. Liddell going straight up the middle, untouched. "Okay," Coach said at halftime. "New ball game." I hope, Nate thought. He threw free and easy, warming up with Pete, throwing the ball to him and then backing up until he was 30 yards away, throwing one spiral after another. Pete never having to move. But he'd felt that way before the game, too. He just wasn't able to carry that feeling into the game. On their second series of the half, Pete ran a sweet Hutchins and go smoked the cornerback trying to cover him and left him behind. Nate couldn't believe how open Pete was, just because the quarterback, number 22, had done such a good job locking him down for most of the game. So Nate wasn't about to overthrow his bud this time. Made sure that even if Pete had to wait for the ball, he was going to put his hands on it. Pete was that kind of open. Nate released the pass and hung the ball up there so long that the Bears' free safety had plenty of time to catch up with Pete. Pete was so focused on the ball that he never saw the safety coming, just watched helplessly as the kid cut in front of him and picked the ball off and fell out of bounds. Second interception of the game. First time that had ever happened to Nate Brody in his life, and when Tyler McCloskey connected deep on the very next play, hitting his wide-open receiver in strides, the Bears were back in the lead. On the sideline, Nate said to Pete that an interception was even uglier than the first one. Pete said, "Can I be you for a second?" "Yeah," Nate said, "but I don't know why anybody would want me to be today." "What interception?" Pete said. "You understand what I'm saying to you?" Nate did. Forget the bad plays as though he had sports amnesia, the way Coach talked about, the way the pros did. But forgetting didn't help his aim any. He went out for the next series and threw incompletion after incompletion. He knew he was overthinking his throws, but knowing didn't make it stop. Fortunately, the Patriots' defense was eager to make up for the touchdown they'd allowed on the last drive. Tyler McCloskey fumbled on the first play and not only recovered the ball, he returned it all the way for the touchdown. Just like that, the Patriots were within a point. In 8th grade football, you got 2 points for kicking a conversion after a touchdown, but hardly anybody kicked, not even the Patriots, even as well as Malcolm could snap the ball. Coach knew too many things could go wrong. If you ran it in or passed it in, you got a point. Valley tried to run after Malcolm scored, but even though there looked to be a hole for Ben behind Malcolm and Sam, Willie stepped into it and hit Ben so hard that the helmet ended up sideways. 14-13. The defense stiffened, and it stayed that way until there were 2 minutes left. Valley had the ball on their 28-yard line after a Blair punt. Before the offense ran out on the field, Coach said to them, "Short and sweet, boys. The measure of a champ is how he finds his best in the late rounds of the fight. So go find your best now." Nate knew he wasn't talking to the rest of them as much as he was talking to him. He looked up into the stands for Abby as he ran onto the field, but she wasn't where she had been sitting at the start of the game, and neither was his mom. It wasn't all that unusual, though. He knew both of them liked to walk around sometimes during the game, find a spot they thought would bring Nate some luck. He sure needed some of that luck now. Brady time, he told himself. Let's play football. The Patriots came out running. It wasn't the drive Nate had always imagined himself leading, but it was effective, and it was his ability to pass that set up the longest run of the day for either team. A 20-yard scramble on a 3rd and 12 from the Blair 29. 40 seconds left. One timeout remaining for the Patriots. They went on a quick count, hoping to catch the Bears on their heels, and Nate handed off to Liddell, but Willie wasn't fooled. He ran the play perfectly and caught Liddell behind the line of scrimmage for a 2-yard loss. The Patriots were forced to call their last timeout. After his quick stop at the sidelines to talk with Coach Rivers, Nate completed a short swing pass to Ben by the right sideline. Ben turned upfield and ran 17 yards before stepping out of bounds and stopping the clock. 1st and 10 from the Bears' 14-yard line. 14 seconds on the clock and no timeouts left. Time for 2 throws into the end zone, but Nate knew get sacked and the game would be over. Nate reminded himself, if I don't see an open receiver, throw the ball away. He almost smiled. It was the one thing he knew he could do with ease today. Throw a incompletion over everyone's head. Nate checked the chalkboard. The first play was the same slant they'd run for Pete on their 3rd play of the game, the one Willie had picked off. Nobody in the huddle said a word about it. Even now, Nate knew they trusted him. "On 2, Nate said. Nate took the snap, took his quick drop, froze Willie this time by looking right, like he was throwing to Eric. Then his eyes found Pete, flashing from the left the way he slashed to the basket in hoops, and Nate led him perfectly. Only the throw was high. Pete reached for it. Went as high as he could for it, but the ball tipped off his fingers. Incomplete. They were down to their last play. 9 seconds left. All Nate said to Pete in the huddle was, "I'll apologize later." He could see Pete grinning on the inside of his face mask. "Will you take me for ice cream too? Let's beat the Bears first." He called for a play they called X-Men, a crossing pattern for Pete and Eric from opposite sides. X being where they passed each other in the middle of the field, and ideally at least one of them lost the guy covering him. Nate told the guys in the line he'd take them for ice cream too, as long as they held their blocks even longer than they had been all day. "Double," Malcolm Burnley said. Dale, Nate said. "You know the drill. Stink out to the right corner of the end zone while I'm eyeballing the other guys." They went with a quick count. Nate short-stepping back into the pocket, watching his 2 wideouts close in on each other, but the 2 Blair quarterbacks read the play perfectly, switching off on their receivers and smothering X-Men like they'd thrown a blanket over it. The line was doing its best to hold their blocks, but Willie had beaten Malcolm and was now coming wide open up the middle at Nate as if a crossing guard had waved him through. Nate couldn't roll to his right. There was too much traffic over there. So he rolled left, even though his last option was on the other side of the field. Willie was still coming. Nate rolled, keeping his eyes on the end zone as he did. Used those eyes of him and saw Liddell waving his arm from the corner. Nobody was near him. Like he'd found an open spot in the parking lot. Yeah, Nate thought. Yeah. Alright, so I want you to pause this video right now and make a prediction if you think the pass is going to be complete or incomplete to Liddell. Alright. No hesitation, no doubts. He planted his back foot and threw across his body, let it rip the way he had plenty of times before when it was just him and the ball and the target, and threw it over the moon. The ball ended up 10 feet over Liddell's head. If it were a hit baseball, the ball was still rising as it went over the fence. The announcers would have called it a tape measure shot. Blair 14, Valley 13. Game over. Nate stayed where he was, watching the Blair players celebrate around Willie Clifton. Saw everything, just like always. Saw the whole field. Saw Adele like he didn't know what to do or where to go, jog after the ball Nate had thrown over his head, like that was his last job today, the final part of the play. Finally, Nate took as long a walk as he could to the timeline, to where his coach and his teammates were. From the time he started playing football, on the days when he got treated like the next big thing in Valley, Massachusetts, and on days when his team fell short, Nate really did believe you won as a team and lost as a team. Just not today. Right before he got to Coach Rivers, he took one last look up into the stands, which were already emptying out. One last look for Abby and his mom. "They're not there," Coach Rivers said. "I decided to wait until the game was over to tell you. Abby fell. Your mom had to take her to the hospital." So what a bad day for Nate. So we'll pick up and see what's going on with Abby, and if she's okay tomorrow. So we'll do chapter 10. Hope you have a great Wednesday, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.